Come to me. Don't make me wait. Please. I want you, Max. You. Come to me now. It's Nikki. Don't keep me waiting. Please. Please.
So today we are typing Cronenberg, who we were planning on typing, but how this typing came about was because we watched him with John Carpenter and John Landis, who's awful, and we just became compelled towards Cronenberg. He's so charming. We were bewitched and we were so curious that we had to type him. So we've technically already mostly typed Cronenberg. So we'll cover that and why we got to his typing. We're starting off with 9-wing 1, 5-wing 4 with a 3 fix and social sexual stacking. And today we are joined by the great beauties, Tina and roommate. So Tina, tell us, what's your type?
I'm a flatline 9-wing 1, 953 with SP.
And a roommate.
I am a 7-wing 6, self-pres sexual 794.
3 Haas and 3-5 fixer. That's gonna be interesting.
Well, especially if we get into talking about like 5 versus 7, because Cronenberg is sort of, he has that sort of like bright, like you said, and sort of up interesting energy. So it's like, but we all agree he's 5 heads, so it might be like an interesting topic to push into. We can start by looking at a beautiful young David Cronenberg. And what impressions do you get?
Social glass is my first impression. One could argue that these are just 70s glasses, but or just blind glasses. He looks like he can't really see.
That's true.
He's like 2. It makes me think that he doesn't photograph well, but when you see him in videos, he looks so much better.
Yeah, he has something endearing about him that comes to life when he's speaking. So his hair, especially in the older pictures, has this flowy updo thing. He has kind of luscious hair for an old.
He has a consistent look throughout his life too.
Yeah.
I mean, he kind of looks like David Lynch here. They're not like too dissimilar in their typing, but also like a 9-wing 1.
He does kind of weirdly remind me of like a mix between David Lynch and Goldblum. Like, I think
Yeah.
Yes,
That's
definitely.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's like their love child.
And I think like, because he's one of the sort of weirder like types, like where he's got like the 5 and the 9 and the like access to the like 4 and all that stuff, but it's like his movies actually make sense. And I feel like it's because he has social, where like David Lynch and like Clive Barker, it's like, I don't know what the fuck I'm watching. But
Besides the sunglasses, there's also not a lot of ornamentation at all in his style.
Yeah.
So how would you explain that if he's social sexual?
I would say 5. And flatline, brings everything down.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Maybe his sexual is all in his hair and in his I don't know. Maybe.
I would think it's also in his eyes. I mean, he looks serious here, which is also the image that he has to kind of portray with his movies. But he has a sparkle in his eyes.
And a smirk on his very corner of his lips.
Yeah.
Ah, yes.
Well, I don't know, man. I suppose.
It kind of looks like he's like about to drop a log.
Yes, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, but this
Someone did
picture
him
also,
dirty.
it looks prefixed.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't argue for 4 or too hard, just going by the picture. It's very steely and successful, eyes on the horizon.
Literally.
Eggs Benedict's not sitting well, ma'am.
Oh, here's a hot one. And he does like, I just want to point out, not to put like poor Tina on the spot, but he kind of looks a little bit like male Tina, like Tina looks like a hot female Dave a little bit.
No one has ever said something so wonderful to me.
Thought you were finished with doing weird stuff.
I thought I was too, but I guess I'm not.
What makes you think I need help? None of our test subjects has returned to normality. Your daughter's screaming. The house is burning. Your daughter's in the house. It's not too late. Is there something here that interests you?
This interests me.
I do feel the urge to kill someone here. You have to stay within the most rigorously scientific confines. You're right. Yes. Politics. Don't have politics. They're very brutal.
Come, Mr. Lee. You don't have to play dumb with me.
That'd be foolish. It would.
Because
Yeah,
that's
that's
a lot of 5 themes.
Yes, but also it's a lot of body horror. It's a pretty gory stuff, which is interesting if he's SP last, but he's also a gut type.
It's body transformation as well. A lot of it is things going into the body and then exploding out. Like it's almost like blood and gore glitter, like exploding out of the body.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, a lot of metamorphosis and also like the scientific sort of aspect of it where it's like the scientists like merging with like this or that, or like the man merging with machine, like merging with the fly, like yeah, giving birth to some grotesque like creation, like all these sort of.
Yeah, and it's expansive stuff.
Yeah.
Or do you guys have videos that you?
I've found an old one with Jonathan Ross that, like, if you're looking for that interviewer thing, whatever it is they do, because I had watched one where he talked specifically about doing body horror, because it was that whole thing of, you know, if he's self-pres blind, but he has so much attention towards the body as this thing that is infected and diseases coming through and all this different stuff.
Yeah, I was also wondering, I live with a self-pres blind 9, and what I've observed is complete neglect for one's own resources with the body, and a disregard for boundaries, and at the same time like a shadow emerging that's manifesting in hypochondria and yeah, like a body fears because there's a lack of control over it. And I think subconsciously we know what we're blind to. So it might haunt us in other ways.
Thanks for coming on the show. I'm going to lay my cards on the table. I'm a big fan of all your films, in actual fact. One thing, before we do the questions properly, I've met quite a few horror film directors, and it always seems to be the case, like yourself, people are surprised when they find that actually you're not some kind of drooling, mad-eyed idiot. You're actually quite a sane, well-adjusted man.
Well, thank you. How do you know that?
but
yeah, no, I think it's true. I think it's true, and I think it has something possibly to do with the balance that you try to find in your life, and you sort of put that stuff on the screen so that it'll stay out of your life. I think that's part of the process.
Do you sense people are disappointed when they meet you and you don't kind of rip the head off a chicken or something in front of them?
I think they're relieved. I think they're a little relieved. Then later they're disappointed because they don't have a story to tell.
Now, let's get on to your latest movie, because I saw it just the other day, and it's a very strange, very extreme film based on a very strange, very extreme underground book,
yes,
which many people had said over the years was unfilmable, could never be brought to the screen. So, were you aware of that reputation, and how did you deal with it?
Well, I mean, the fact that it's unfilmable to me is just normal, because I don't really, I think it's an illusion to think that you can film any book. Really what you get is something else that reminds people of a book, but the two media are so completely different that you can never really do a book on screen. It's something else, and the sooner you come to terms with that, I think the better. But the fact that the book was considered unfilmable really meant that I was free. It was a liberating.
So real quick, that part, the thing that came to my mind when I was listening to it is, I don't know if you guys have an idea if he's wing 1 or wing 8, but to me, like, that sounded like frustration. Like, just very low level, just like, it can never really be, the book can never really be on the screen, just like that. The fantasy can never really be actualized or something.
Yeah, I thought that was all just textbook 9-wing-1 stuff. Like, he was so playful too, playing with the back and forth pendulum, swinging it between like, oh, thank you for the compliment, but take it back down a little bit because I'm a 9, bring it back into balance. Everything had to be back to center, but still playful at the same time.
Yeah, he's super playful and engaging, which already points to social 9, because SP9 is more like a blob, especially in contrast with a head type like Jonathan Ross.
But you know what, Tina's a hot blob, so people work it.
I own it.
I like Ross.
I don't know if this is me reaching, but it almost seems like kind of rejection-y too, from the headspace of like I just assume that these things are not possible, so I'm just doing it exactly how I want to do it. Like, it's just yeah, that's just total.
Well, and also the 5 thing of like, nothing really applies to me. If my own idea is this, I'm just going to do it.
Reinvent it for the screen, which is really what I've done.
So if you were going to reinvent it, what was it about the original then that attracted you, that excited you?
Well, it's very funny, for one thing. I mean, people think about the extreme aspects of the book because it is very scatological and very obscene in some ways, and sometimes people think it's pornographic. It's also very fragmented and hallucinatory. But it's also extremely funny and beautifully written and very powerful book.
It's curious you say it's funny, because I found it amusing, but I was sitting like the rest of the people in this preview theater, not quite knowing whether we were allowed to laugh.
Yes, I know, it's strange. I mean, when a group of critics have seen the film, I always ask someone, did they laugh? Because if they don't laugh, I think I'm in trouble. I think that maybe they didn't really understand.
Didn't get the point.
Yeah.
Could you set this clip up for us? Because it's a strange film. This is a scene in the movie when Ian Holmes, who plays
Also, just the fact that this fucking Jonathan Ross twerp keeps like harping on, it's very strange. Oh, it's so strange. Like, is it supposed to be funny? Like, it just kind of, to me, says like kind of that 5 head stuff where it's just like, yeah, like it's going to be more like off the wall to a Jonathan Ross type. Like,
well, and he's not going to realize that it's off the wall until the reaction comes, which is a really 5 head space.
Yeah.
It has that like social blind, like, oh, you thought that was weird. It didn't apply in my mind as weird at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know that like getting the audience feedback could be framed as attachment, but to me, yeah, it does seem like he has to gauge it because he's so removed from the sphere of people that he's like, what do the people think?
Well, and that's the job, and that's the fun for the director at the end, to gauge the reaction, no matter what your type is.
Yeah.
Well, brilliantly.
Yes.
It's involving typewriters that have mutated, or have they?
Yes. Well, yes, we have a talking insect typewriter. You have to accept this, first of all. And it's a kind of in the film, it's a kind of a metaphor for the unconscious of the writer. He's really talking to himself. But
Yeah, I got that.
Yeah. Did you?
No, I didn't.
I'm going to write a book.
I came out not knowing what the hell I just seen, to be quite frank.
You have to see it again, and you have to pay both times. It's very important. But if you see it, I know it seems like a hideous thing to ask that one see it twice, but I think now with video and pay TV and so on, people do end up seeing a film twice. It becomes crystal clear the second time.
And you can take the kids the second time?
No, not unless they've grown up.
Let's have a look at the clip, and the clip is actually for free.
All right. We're taking your clock, Nova. Up in the bag. No. What's going on here? Wait, this is the heinous mistake you're making. They do something. Stop them.
He's got a gun, Clark Nova. You don't want to lose your best agent.
You're going to have to write a report, please. And I mean, Paul.
Well, how am I going to write it? Long?
Will you take this back off? This is insubordination. We move on to the paper.
Why? What about that, the attraction?
Well, I think it is the extremeness. I mean, the fact that within the genre, it is expected and accepted that you be extreme. And I think it's when it's at its most extreme that the cinema becomes exciting and revealing. I think The Fly, if you think of the plot of The Fly, it's two beautiful people an eccentric who meet, fall in love. One of them gets a hideous disease, dies slowly before your eyes, and the other one has to commit a mercy killing to end it. This is not a prescription for a commercial movie.
Yeah.
Like, do you think that kind of speaks to the type a little bit too? Kind of like partly like seems like a competency nightmare of sorts. Having to care for this like the decomposing person.
Well, and also the SP blind to me, even the way he talks about bodies is just so detached.
It's a movie about someone having this disease, but that's not what he focuses on. It's just a side note in his elaboration. It's bodies are always just a side note or anything SP. It's always focused on the people or the relationship.
The body is the vehicle for the transformation. It's never just interesting as itself.
Mm-hmm.
Literal sort of street tragedy, I don't think it would ever have been made. But because it's a horror film, all of that is completely accepted. I got no argument from the studios when I wanted to be that extreme just in the plot line. But when I tried to get Dead Ringers, which does not have the framework of a horror film, really it's more psychological drama, 40 studios turned that film down.
Like, for people who don't know, that's like the gynecologist twins movie. So
Cameos, but you took pretty near a leading role in one of Clive Barker's movies in Nightly. Right. Well, how did that come about? What prompted you?
I think it's because Clive was very inexperienced and thought I'd be good. And I couldn't resist. I mean, he was basically offering me the chance to play the third lead in a movie, and all directors are basically hams and want to act. You know, all actors want to direct, you know, it's the way it is. And I really couldn't resist the chance to be on the other side of the camera to see what it would be like. And it's very different on the other side of the camera.
Well, I'm a fan of his as well.
I wonder if that speaks to social sexual,
I think it speaks to social, but also to Nine, wanting to see the other perspective, to create the whole picture and to have the full experience of something.
Yes, but only when invited. You would never do it on your own.
Yeah, good point.
Well, but I think he would probably agree with us all that it wasn't his finest movie, but so you might not have seen it, but if you haven't, here's a quick clip of Mr. Cronenberg in action in Clive Barker's Nightbreed.
How do you know my name?
Oh, that's a good question. Here's the answer. Who's alive, Laurie? And your death is going to bring him out of hiding.
Read somewhere, and I don't know if it's true, but I read somewhere that you'd actually been working on a comedy. You were going to make a comedy.
I think all my films are comedies, and people tell me they're not. I'm very confused.
I think I would probably side with the people
there
who
were
are
a few-
confused.
Yeah.
But would you do a down the line of straight comedy, a kind of Steve Martin vehicle or something? Would that interest you?
No, actually, the script that I wrote that was supposed to be a comedy in the Hollywood style was called Six Legs, because insects have 6 legs, and it was about insects, and it was about insects that were addictive. So
you see, this is back to a very constant theme. In this movie.
yeah, and in fact, between The Fly and Naked Lunch, I think I've done that comedy.
You've probably done more for insects in cinema than anyone else, I think.
They're going to give me a medal.
Well, I've just realised, kind of with insects for your next project, if this is good, because you're doing M Butterfly.
Yes, that's strange, but the butterfly really has to do with the idea of the Oriental lady.
But there's transformation again.
Yes, there is, and it's amazing. I don't even have to do the movie. You can.
I'll just tell everyone about it and take the cash.
Yes.
Well, listen, it's been a great pleasure meeting you.
I was enchanted by him and lost my point, actually.
Yeah, it's weird too. I'm getting really, I feel like it's like I'm like being flirted with or something, like where I'm just like, I'm like paying attention to him and I'm like, I feel like my mood is lifting.
I feel really angry when someone else is talking. Cronenberg. I just want to soak him up more. No, but
I feel a bit that way with when I watch his movies too. They have a bit of that charm that, I don't know, that draws you in and makes you feel happy, even though you're watching people's heads explode and, gut vaginas and stuff.
It's also notable that he doesn't perceive his movies as comedy, but then everything he does and says has this light-hearted, flirtatious, social sexual pizzazz. But he's still doing the 5 thing of doing something obscure and insecty and weird, and but he's making it lighthearted, so it is perceived as a comedy.
Would you want to talk specifically maybe about like the different
5 and 7? Yeah. Well, let's talk about a couple of things. Well, one point I wanted to make real quick that's like a side note is that I was looking at his leading men, and all of them have sexual in their stacking from what I could tell, which I thought was really interesting. And he uses them as a foil usually against like a woman who's sexual blind. So it has that 9 pendulum back and forth, which was fascinating that he could find. Well, Julianne Moore also is not sexual blind, but so she was the lead. And let's see, what other notes? Oh, the 5 to 7 thing I thought was really interesting to think about David Lynch's movies. Cronenberg's just lack completely the theatrical at all. So there's everything is being brought down. All of the production is super cold and simple, and then the body explosion is allowed to happen. The metamorphosis is allowed to happen in this very like flatline way. Like it just happened, the explosion happened, and there's some people reacting to it, but you don't hold on it. There's no drama. There's no buildup or that kind of like self-consciousness that it's funny or theatrical. It's just very straightforward, very this is happening. And then let's see, what were we going to talk about? What was the third thing? Sorry, I lost track of it.
Oh, like yeah, like a flatline, so 953 trifix, like with social sexual versus like say SPSO or something like that, maybe.
Yeah, so the reason that I think he's so charming is because he's simultaneously got the charm of the social sexual that is making him playful with everyone, and he's got that like cluelessness of the 5 and the smoothness of the 9 in the middle of those two things, kind of making it all flow. So he almost seems like slightly childlike, and it just amps up the charm in this way that is so engaging and so refreshing to watch. And you don't get that with other Flatline stackings, I don't think. Maybe Sexual Social, but I don't know. I haven't seen that.
Mm-hmm. I would expect, we did consider Sexual Social for him for a bit, but I would expect a Sexual Social to be more serious and tense, and Contraflow is more messaging less playful, and just the way they were interacting in the video clip before, it was so back and forth, and they had such a good rapport, even though Jonathan Ross is terrifying to a withdrawn type, because he's like a little dog that's barking all the time, and but he did it so well, even with the 5, which is just awkward in general.
Yeah. Oh, the other thing about the 5 head, if you look at the trajectory of his films, they go from like the larger body as a whole, physical explosions, like from heads exploding, and then slowly you start to go inward into, ports in bodies and, VCR vaginas and all of this stuff. And then it starts to go to psychological inward horrors and transformations. So now what he's working with is all in the head, and it doesn't have that same explosiveness physically, but it has it in the mind, which I thought was very 5 trajectory, to just keep narrowing.
Oh, that's a good point.
Wow. Yeah. But it's also unifying or synthesizing again with the 9 core.
Like I could see almost with a 7 head where it could, like just to like your point, Tina, where it's narrowing, it's like a 7 head would maybe get more and more elaborate and fucking stupid.
Yeah, like David Lynch's stuff has gotten a little bit more intricately weird each movie,
Yeah, like out weirding yourself just for the sake of like your own and entertaining your own.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more escalating.
Yeah.
It's escalating, and 5 is distilling and distilling and distilling until you have this symbol or essence of something.
Here's a weird short film he just made, maybe over the pandemic. I don't know if I should include this, but I just thought it was kind of funny that he did this, and maybe it's weirdly telling on some level of something. The Death of David Cronenberg, a 1-minute short film.
Is this Flatline with sexual? Completely unfazed, yet still wanting to connect and cuddle with the dead.
See, that's kind of like what I was trying to figure out, and when I was watching clips of him with all of his stuff around the body, like even that figuring out if it's some kind of a playground thing, like it's the body, who cares, as opposed to the idea of actively, like, the body is the thing that's the problem, so if I get rid of that, then I can do all this other stuff over here. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can kind of see, I can see the argument for the body as a playground or a sexual playground. He's cuddling with his, because that was weirdly erotic.
Well, it was very erotic. I think the 9 is anchoring him in the body too, in a way that, is that weird 9, like I don't have a body, but I'm a body type and I don't acknowledge it.
Yeah. Christina,
the pendulum.
Christina just wrote into the chat the most erotic, and that's the thing. I don't think that, and this is a pretty concurrent reaction that we all do have to his presence and his movie. It's a pull and it's an eroticism that I don't think we would get from a sexual blind Flatline.
Definitely not.
It's true.
I wonder what reaction of a 6 head would have to him. Maybe the Jonathan Ross, like, oh, it's so weird.
Confusion. Why can't I put you in my spreadsheet?
Aged so well also. Like he really looks better as an older man than he did when he was younger.
Oh, nice.
I think that self-pressed blind can have this ageless quality to them because it has this childlike flair. I mean, I do see that he's aged, but he looks better than he was younger to me. And I'm usually not into older looking people. Like I'm very SP and very about preservation of the body and fitness and health and being young and fresh. And he really, he wears that white hair fine.
This is the Cronenberg simp episode.
When did we all become such simps?
Yes. I feel like this
so
is the first.
Yes, call me David.
So we could watch just seeing him like against his peers, like just the energy is different.
So I have a request. I would really love for you to edit an Landis screenshot of Tina in
Well, because we're still arguing about John Carpenter's type, but we can all agree that fucking John Landis is probably a wretched 7, or I don't know, maybe he's an 8-wing 7. I think he's like a 7. So.
7.
Yeah, this is an interview with John Landis, who we all are disgusted by. John Carpenter, whose type is in negotiations right now, and David Cronenberg. And you'll probably find, as did we, that we are really wanting to just watch David Cronenberg because he has that sexual magnetism.
Absolutely blanket general question. No, I don't think there's anything that should not be shown in films.
Specifically, your films are known for a lot of graphic violence. So let's specifically move into your films.
Yeah, they have been. No, I think it really depends on the tone of the film. It depends on what the film is trying to do. I mean, I have been offended by violence in movies, but primarily because I think that, I can't think of a specific instance, but because I think, let's say, that the violence is completely gratuitous within the context of the movie. That is to say, every movie has its own rules, and you can really set up any game that you want. But once you do that, you really have to play that game. Otherwise, the audience feels they know that something's wrong, that something's not working.
Your films are probably best known.
I just want to point out too, while we're watching him, if we see a bit more Landis, it's like, I think like when you're watching like him with a 5 head talking about things, he's like concise, he knows what he's like, staying on a path, like the way he's talking is like unfolding in a linear fashion. But when you watch 7s, when they're talking about something interesting, like they often like end up fucking do. And even with social sexual, which is a sort of scattered stacking, he's not spraying everywhere the way, like, if we begrudgingly jump to Landis.
Well, just Landis is trying so hard, which is what makes it so sad. He's trying so hard to make something happen. And like, if you look at this panel and think like, okay, who's going to be the interesting one to listen to just based on how they look? Like you got the dude with the slick comb over and the glasses and whatever Landis is doing. but it's too much. Like it's just trying so hard, and the social 9 just has the ba-ba-boom that it draws you in because he's interesting to listen to.
Yeah, you don't feel that thirst to be the most fascinating storyteller in the room. Like,
Right. Yeah.
It's also, I think, a power of all gut types, or that gut types can possess, that they are naturals and that they just vibe and just feel the most like gut types feel like they're the most completely themselves.
Who's grounded, yeah.
Without trying too hard.
Yeah, image is trying too hard, and head is annoying or is stressing, can be stressful, and
yeah.
Do you have any particularly strong feelings about the ratings?
Yes. The very few people realize this, but the United States is the only country in the world that does not have government-imposed censorship. We have a self-regulating board of Motion Picture Association of America.
Like even just watching him, it's like he's talking about whatever, but he's like doing waka waka while he's talking. Horrible.
Yeah, he's stating the most boring facts and pretending that he's saying something completely novel and extravagant and fancy, and it's just shut the fuck up.
Let's keep just burning him for a little break here. Beautiful Cronenberg.
Whose job is to reflect the current mores. For instance, I made a movie called Kentucky Fried Movie, which was 5 years ago. They had a scene of lovemaking where the girl was on top, and it was fairly graphic, and that got an R rating. Now, with the moral majority and equally despicable groups screaming, an identical scene in American Werewolf in a porno movie projected on a screen was considered enough to get me an X. It was the same shot. And when I said, well, wait a minute.
Also, like, I'm just like burning 7s now, which I'm a 7, I'm allowed to do this for anyone who doesn't know. But the way he's also like, it's like, I feel like 7s, because I've caught myself doing this where I just assume people like know all these different reference points. It's like, I'm just sort of like, right guys, like it's like this sort of playing to the audience. Like I assume he has social, he seems like I don't know, maybe a social first or second, but it's just like, you're obviously entertained by what I'm saying, right? Like,
I just want to say that 5 heads can also have this expectation that the other just gets it because they've already distilled what they're going to say and they've already walked this path and arrived somewhere. So the arrival or the pathway there, unlike a 6 head, isn't interesting. The 5 is a rejection head fix, so the result is what's interesting and what they can offer. And then it's 5 heads are sometimes stumped that they have to over-explain stuff that they find obvious too, because they just pre-arrive there. And
I think 7s can do that too, but maybe it's like a extroverted intuition thing more, is just like I find I really, like, maybe I'm trying to think about what the differences would be. I get really frustrated when like 6s, it's mostly 6s, are like, well, where's your evidence? Show me this and test it, like do these things. And it's like, I don't operate in that realm, all right? That's for you Karens to worry about. Like, I just like, here's what I see. Like, you don't see it because you just like can't comprehend it, all right? But like maybe a 5 would present.
5 is a one-way street. And 5 is coming at you with the results. It's already neutered or distilled. And then sometimes you ask a 5, how did you get there, or why do you think that way? And it's just because I'm competent. Because why the fuck are you asking me this? That's not what's interesting. What's interesting is the result. So and how I arrived there isn't isn't relevant either, because I'm here to talk about the result. So let's not waste time. It's competency. It's got to be effective. And
I'm curious, like, roommate, did you self-type as like a 5 at all? No.
No, honestly, like I and that's why. So I thought I was a heart type. Like I genuinely thought I was some kind of a heart type. And
Yeah,
that's
me
why,
too.
like I mentioned weeks ago, whatever, with, you know, people typing in correlation with shadow. I know it's basic word, boring. But like with shadow material, that like for me, if I typed as a 4, because whatever, but that if you already are in tune with all your emotions, like this is what's here, you know, the core is what's here, that what I'm looking at is what is here, then I don't have to actually engage like everything else around it. So with 7, I think there's a replacement through the thinking center of what the painful emotions actually are, that for me to type as a heart type, it was kind of like, I've already confronted all that, so I don't have to deal with it now. Like I've already dealt with it, so it's not a problem. So then to like the last thing, I thought if I was in a 4, I'd probably think I was like a 9 or something. That for me, head center, I didn't think I was a head type at all. It was just kind of because I don't think what I'm doing is thinking. I think what I'm doing is feeling, but it's thoughts about feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting. Thoughts about feelings.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Look. Damn, that one hit. Yeah. So you you type as a 7 now.
Oh yeah. It is. Yeah, like I don't like the word freedom because it makes me think, I don't know if you've seen that picture of that dude at some point. I don't know which state it was in, somewhere here in America, where it was the barbecue, beers, and babes or boats or whatever his shirt said. And he was just like, call for justice now. Like he was just yelling about something that, like, to me, freedom just sounds like shoving fireworks up your ass. And then, you know, like, I don't like that word, but that's just word pickiness. But that's why it's interesting to me. And like, that's why that whole, you know, distinction is interesting, that I said, you know, if you have someone who is allegedly a heart type, who type themselves as a 7, that what they are looking to show about themselves is how expansive or quote unquote like outgoing they are, or whatever it might be. That like the mistyping has some kind of like weight to it, that then you have somebody who, like for me, like the emotions are so compartmentalized that then I don't have to actually like care about them. I don't want to keep rambling, but
that was really
just that idea.
I think also because you're like a social blind 7 with 4 and 9 fixes, like, and as 4 wing 5, right? And 9, is it 9 wing 8?
Yeah.
So
that's probably
my roommate. I'm roommate, but my roommate thinks that I have a Kyle overlay.
Okay.
So just because I have punched holes in drywall on multiple occasions, but I don't know. I have no clue. I'm pretty sure I have like an 8 fixed on the 9, but I have no idea what the 4. I don't know what's there. Yeah.
I love it. That's beautiful.
In the States. But you have to understand that I live in Ontario, Canada, which used to be the most liberal province and now is the most restrictive. So I have to agree, or let me amplify what John was saying. When I came down here to talk to the MPAA about ratings, it was still a relief compared with what happens in Ontario, which is that they take your picture, they take every print, and they cut it, and they hand it back to you, and they say, this is your new movie. They keep the pieces that they've taken out, and you go to jail for 2 years if those are projected, if you put the pieces back. And that's real censorship. And
Yeah,
so what you've got here, however imperfect it may be, at least and you still have the option of releasing the film as an X. And of course, there are huge economic sanctions against doing that, and usually you have a contractual obligation not to have an X. Nonetheless, if you really want it to be an X, you can still get it shown here.
So like, it's interesting this, because it's like, I see what he's doing is sort of the 9-5 maybe. It's like neutral. It's not positive reframing, but it's just like accepting things for as they are and operating maybe like within the lines to get what he wants. Like, whereas I feel like if he had a 7 head, he might be like, fuck you, and like, you know, like go out of his way to like
Do it anyway. Yeah.
be disruptive. Like his films are obviously disruptive, but if he's purposely trying to, well, we could look at Viggo. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we should definitely have a look at this video. The contrast is just so poignant of the two Flatlines, the social blind one and the...
Oh yeah, I guess that's a good thing to point out is like Viggo Mortensen is, what is he, 9 wing 8?
Yeah, probably.
Like 3-5 or 5-3?
For him, I would think 3-5. 9 wing 8, SPSX, 9-3-5.
Okay. And so we're contrasting him with David Cronenberg, who we think is 9 wing 1, 5 wing 4, 3 wing. I guess we should land on like a wing for him. You guys think he might be 2? I mean, I see so much 4, but I guess it could just be if he's 5 wing 4 second.
Yeah, it's super hard to tell because he is very peoply, but he is a social 9.
The thing that TIFF has enabled, it's transport. I actually have no idea how my mind works, of course. I'm the last person you should ask.
Maybe that's
really.
just as well.
But, well, I must say, I looked at Crash for the first time in about 20 years last week because the producer, Jeremy Thomas, is doing a restoration of it. It's a little weird to be alive and have your films being restored. You know? And so I watched it on my computer and I laughed through the whole thing. I really did. I thought, these people are crazy. I mean, all they think about is sex and car crashes. What is this? I don't know if you had the same response.
Well, one thing that what I thought about, you know, when I watched it again, in preparation for.
Sorry, like because of our conversation earlier, all I can see is the.
You really just focus on his hand movements and on his awkwardness and his hunch posture. I really want to drag him from the stage and free him from the situation because he looks so miserable. He's clinging to Cronenberg for life. That's his whole focal point, and everything. And he just tries to blend out the audience. It's adorable. How lost he is in this interview. Just the posture of the two compared. It's
they're both kind of doing like a, I don't even know.
Bro hands.
Being here today, I was thinking, well, essentially, and I'm sure this has been said, lots has been said about the movie, but that, you know, intimacy, pleasure, communication, sex can be anything. That's what I get
coming
from
over tomorrow.
Because he doesn't understand connection and intimacy.
Well, like, I'm not sure who pointed this out when we were watching this earlier, but it's like, it is like they are flirting with each other. It's like they're not
Sexual playground.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm 8 o'clock. Good. All right. After dinner, before dinner,
during dinner.
Oh, but that can be anything, right? And I think that maybe, you know, I'm thinking about the the controversy or the censorship, in some places in Britain and other places, and the stir that it caused. The fact that I said before the movie started, I said, one of the things I like about the way you direct movies is that you're not telling people what to think. And you certainly don't. With this movie, you offer a world, a way of life, a behavior. And in this one, when I say sex can be anything, that's what I get from it. It can be anything: pleasure, intimate connection, communication or lack of communication. It can be anything. And maybe for some people, in some institutions, maybe that's makes them nervous that there are no moral guidelines. There's no absolutes in terms of what sex is or what pleasure is,
Well, when Jeremy Thomas proposed the novel, J.G. Ballard's novel, to me, and I started to read it, and after about 20 pages, I had to put it down because I found it quite repellent, actually, and very disturbing. And I said, no, Jeremy, I can't read it. And then eventually I did read it, and it's written in a very...
Because you can eventually always get the 9 to do the thing you want if you just give them space to come to the same decision themselves.
Mortenson is so inarticulate. It's really hard to follow him. He's just desperately trying to bring some point across, but he is basically just repeating himself and flattering his bromance buddy. And also what I found, it's just a teensy note, but he was like, sex can be anything, or it can be during dinner or after dinner, or before dinner or after dinner, or he was like listing SP stuff, and then he was and Cronenberg was like, during dinner, like, fuck dinner, let's have sex.
Very cold, sort of medical, clinical kind of way, which is, once you accept that, is quite extraordinary. And then, but I still thought, but how could I can't see myself making this into a movie at all. And then...
Did you feel that way about Naked Lunch?
No, that was different, quite different, because Naked Lunch is funny, there's a lot of humor in it. Ballard's novel had zero humor and zero like self-awareness. It was just what it was. And it had a weird medical sensuality. It was all described in medical terms, the parts of the body, and the sex was described as almost as a doctor would describe it, who was, so it was very unsettling in many ways. And then eventually I was with Jeremy at some film festival. It could have even been here, I can't remember. And then I said, yeah, we should really do Crash. And I totally surprised myself by that. I don't know what was going on in my life at the time. I don't know.
He downloaded it from the universe. It just came to him to make this movie all of a sudden. Yeah, but the sex was being described clinical and personal in medical terms, and dry and boring, probably written by a sex last. So
I was thinking the same thing.
Fucking juice. This is unsettling to me, because this is not what sex is about.
That's interesting.
It's yeah,
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah.
That's like too, I don't know if it's connected at all, but when he talked about Dead Ringers, which I've never seen that movie, but he talked about like the weird refusal to play the part of a gynecologist. Like, even when he was talking about some weird like body kind of a thing, like that's why to me it's interesting how he does like relation to body or self-preservation or whatever, that he talked about how no actors wanted to play gynecologists. That it's like this semi
them off,
disconnect.
yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it puts them off in a way because it's not sexy, you know,
Right.
because the doctor shouldn't be sexy in a way.
Right.
Oh, that's a
So
good
it's
point.
so it's undesirable or something. Yeah.
Like he brings up these kinds of themes and roles and stuff, and depending on like how it relates to the body, he has openness to it, and like he's available for it, but at the same time he still puts it into like sort of specific boxes. Like I don't know if that's just me how I'm interpreting it, but that's just kind of how it seems. I don't know.
Yeah, could point towards social roles that he's assigning to
his actors. Yeah.
That is a really interesting though conversation to be had, how like blind spot shows up in films, especially if it's horror, because then it like would manifest through like a fear-based thing. Or I guess that was that wasn't a horror movie, but it's like the psychological realm of whether it's Playground or Last Instinct, like the thing you almost skim over, maybe like because you don't like you're able to wield it as well or something. I wonder if there's
sometimes it's outright antagonized, I think. I'm trying to think of a good example.
With maybe David Lynch movies, like social aspects in his films are like, what? You know, it's always like so uncomfortable and weird when people talk to each other.
Yeah.
So maybe like that. But I can also see his sexual playground very much in Cronenberg movies. It's always like, what? You know, like, I don't know, like, for example, like using like vaginas or whatever, you know, it's like, I don't know if sexual dom would like do it like that explicitly. I don't know, because it's maybe more sacred to them.
Yeah, especially with like a 5 head, just like maybe not even connecting, that things would be like totally bizarre to do, which is why yeah, stuff seems so original. And because there probably aren't a ton of social sexual 953s making movies. So.
No.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe It Follows is a good example of a sexual last movie where the thing, like some metaphor for an STD or giving into one's
desires,
one's desires haunts you, and you can't let go of it. And through social connection, you kind of beat it in the end, but then it might just follow you again, but you're together. And the last scene is like an uncomfortable scene where you don't know if I think it's in the back haunting them again. I don't want to spoil it anyways, but
I would like to do him actually, because I think he might be a 953 as well, or like a 935.
Yeah, but it's a very flatliney feel. That's true.
That was a good movie. I like that one.
Yeah, David Robert Mitchell, but he also did this other one called Under the Silver Lake, and I could see that being flatliney too. He uses a lot of interests that like I have, but the way he executes it, it's like about this very super 9 guy, just sort of like stumbling into this sort of mysterious Hollywood underbelly, and the whole thing, it's all very like It Follows, where it's just like more atmosphere, you know what I mean? And like, yeah, like the sexual stuff is more just like these kind of perfunctory, like oh, they're fucking, like it's not it's not like
like the mom scene in It Follows. It's so creepy and so distant, and so yeah,
I could see that actually being a sexual blind thing, having it where it's, because there is a horror, I think, in the blind spot. So if you're making horror, then you're probably going to have these like fucking weird little expressions.
It came out of your mouth and you said,
but I did have a Ferrari, I think, at the time. But that might have had something to do with it. So, but in fact, that's a funny thing, because somebody said to me, you know, yeah, you're a car guy, you've raced cars and motorcycles, so of course you would like this. And I said, no, absolutely not. This is an anti-hedonistic view of cars and the beauty of cars and the sensuality of cars. And it's the antithesis of that. It's actually, you know, a horrible rendering of what a car is. And
sorry, I want to say something. That actually also points a little bit to like SP blind, because he's like, you know, like not even thinking about like the actual technical things of the car. Like he just like focus on the sensuality and the beauty of the car as an object, and not like the fucking technical, how it's made, like how the car rides, and you know, like the functionality of the car, but more like sensuality.
Yeah, this is absurd to me. Like cars are just a technical thing, and I would have thought that mostly SP or dudes who have SP in their stacking are into stuff like that, but it's not that simple. You really have to look closer, and someone being describing cars as beautiful or sensual. That's just a different instinctual viewpoint on something that is not directly connected with SP in this case.
It has its subversive reality, you know, sort of underneath the other reality of what cars are. And that was another thing that Ballard did, was the way that cars were described was also very...
Oh, I was wondering if we could even just talk about his heart fix a little bit, just where, just for like people watching this and stuff, like how we're seeing 3/4 or 2, like obviously 2, he's not. It's not.
Yeah. There's nothing overly catering towards the other, nothing overly people focused or annoyingly other referencing about him. 2 fixers are always checking in with the other. That's not what he's doing. 4 fixers are always focused on the negative, and especially I think with an attachment core, annoyingly sometimes distancing themselves from others. He also isn't doing. He just he fits the flatline archetype so well, because he's super competent, and so we just need to decipher whether his 3 has more of a loner, stuff focused, artistic vibe, or more of a people. I mean 3-wing 2 is getting their 3 thing through name dropping people, me and my following, or this is and 3-wing 4 is more like the I'm an aristocratic artist, or I do this specific thing that I'm so good at. And
yeah, I can see more of a 3-wing 4 for him, like now.
I'm not sure
at this moment.
I'm also not sure yet,
because he doesn't seem snooty. Like he seems, which I guess if it's heart last anyways, it's like, yeah, it's hard to say, because I do see so much like 4 influence in like movies, but it could just be 5-wing 4 so as the second fix, like playground art stuff. But
yeah, I think it's 5-wing 4 because there's no super ego or attachment to his world building. Like what we see in his movies is basically his mind distilled into a movie, and there's no six-ish influence to it. It's just his own. Like 5-wing 4 is the insect archetype somehow, and
he does like his insects.
Oh, yeah.
They should give him a medal.
made from bugs.
Yeah, and like
Or in the shape of a bug.
954 doesn't make sense either because doesn't feel triple withdrawn and triple
No.
whole spiral. Even with social sexual, that would still be like holding into a self energy.
Yeah, with the forfix, there's something slightly off. Like a forfix just has to overdo the individualism so that it's not as palatable. Like it's specifically, it's specific, and it's not. He's steely, suited for the masses and adored by the and
professional in a way.
Professional, yeah.
Yeah, and social sexual.
I mean, even look at us. We're all kind of scraggly.
Yeah. I know. That's what's so funny, because you said, it's like about the forfixed, and then the cameras on my phone, they shifted, and I saw suddenly roommate's face, and it was like, like that. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm leaning more to 3 Wing 4 now too. I'm thinking about his movies like Metropolis, and then like the one that just came out. Like there is more of that steely 3. Like I think maybe you said Sofie. I don't know. Because if he's social sexual, then that kind of has like a people-y, the 2E. It's not like, I think it's sexual social that's more 2E, right? But there's something still sort of more pleasant and people-y about that. So
yeah, 3 Wing 2 is also more mainstream, and he's not that mainstream. But
no, he's not mainstream.
More mainstream, more open, more likable, whereas 3 Wing 4 is more aloof and more, I'm doing this one thing that I'm really good at, and you need to admire me for this.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that describes him very well.
Yeah.
I think this one sort of like helps to highlight the 5 head. I mean, we've already talked about it, but yeah, just him describing stuff is like.
But in practice, I couldn't wait for typewriters to die. Grazie, Tito. We had a panel here. I was talking with Spike Lee and some other colleagues in cinema about the nostalgia there is for the old days of cinema, where you would have a community worshiping in the church of cinema, and a communal experience, maybe partly religious. I think Almodovar talked about the sacredness of the cinema, and I said,
that seems social to me when he's
I was thinking the same.
Yeah.
So social. Yeah.
that you must perhaps be a Catholic in order to believe that. But
that doesn't get so never mind, because he just challenged it. But what that was just describing was like super social. Well, maybe he's social self-pres, the guy he was talking to, but
I think cinema has been permanently disrupted. I think it will never be the same, and I think it might be like vinyl records, perhaps, or people who still type on typewriters. It will be a retro activity going to a cinema. I mean, there are social reasons why people like to go out to a cinema, but for me, I haven't gone to the cinema for many, many years, I have to confess.
Why is that so? Why is that so?
Parking is a problem. Parcheggio. È un problema. And of course, you can watch with friends at home. You're not watching probably with this many friends, although you're all welcome to come to my house. Toronto, Canada.
Social.
That's social sexual.
Hartford Avenue.
That's like, I'm everyone's friend. I'm the life of the party. You can all come to my house and party on.
And it actually says his fucking address. What?
that does seem self-pres blind.
Yes, I know, right?
for a 9 to do that. Like, also that he like likes to be in the comfort of his own home is kind of 90. Like, that he would rather do that than go to a cinema, even though he's a literal filmmaker.
Still a homebody.
Yeah.
To watch anytime on my screen. I'll fit you all in somehow. There's a movie that's made for Netflix, really a cinema, because in the actual making of it, it is cinema, but in the releasing of it, it seems to be something else. That it is not shown on big screens, it's shown on your iPhone, your Apple Watch, maybe. I've said I wouldn't mind seeing Lawrence of Arabia on an Apple Watch. I think that would be good. I think it would be a different movie, but it would be interesting. So
it's interesting that he's like totally embracing, I think, the technological changes like of what's happening, because I feel like that does point to Fivehead, like definitely over 6, because I feel like 6s are more like like
holding on
of like old tradition or whatever, like and then like I mean I guess 7, you could argue 7s would like that too. I personally am super anti-tech at this point, but it's like he just has like this neutral sort of sure, why not, like I'm not like it's kind of crazy to me that he, as a filmmaker, he has literally almost no emotional sort of feeling which way or the other about what happens with like film direction of film technology. Like it seems like, yeah, if he was like, I don't know, 4 fixed or had like 6 or whatever, like there would be this sort of
pushing again.
Yeah.
Yeah, competency is also just you take things at face value, or not, you take things as they are, and you detach yourself emotionally from them. So you just need to find a solution. It's the opposite of reactive. It's okay, we have this problem and now I am competent and I can figure it out, and my emotions don't have a place in there. So whatever change happens, the ego of competency is also that I will have this covered. I will find a solution for this and I will work with this.
Yeah, we'll figure it out and we'll adapt to the new technology and we'll function still.
Yeah, like under the 9 umbrella of go with the flow, like don't be disruptive, kind of.
I think Netflix is the example that is the most disruption. It's unprecedented. If you make a movie for Netflix, it might never be seen on a cinema screen, but in one day it will be released in 190 countries. Now, this has never happened before. This is really quite incredible. As a child, I would go every Saturday to a theater called the Pylon on College Street. And in those days, people were not worried about their children being kidnapped and murdered. So there would be a stream of children like lemmings, coming from all of the streets down to College Street, a big street, and going to the cinema, the Pylon, where we would watch cartoons and we would watch cowboy movies, Hopalong Cassidy, Roy Rogers, pirate movies maybe, kids, good action kids movies and stuff. And then one day I came out of the Pylon, and across the street, because where I was living had become an Italian section of Toronto. And even now it's called Little Italy, that section of Toronto. And across the street, there was a theater that only showed Italian films. It was called the Studio. There was enough Italian population in that area of Toronto to support a cinema that only showed films in Italian. And
I think also just that he's getting into these details. It's
about the community.
Yeah, it like does seem 5e versus like 7 just probably taking like the most interesting part and not actually fleshing out the story, like to give context.
Yeah.
But
Like
also 9
stopping.
is being lost in the soup and telling things how they are, with perhaps some unnecessary details adorned to it.
Yeah.
I find him interesting in this because he's talking alone. He doesn't have someone to ping off from, and I don't see a 2-wing on his 3 in this video anymore, because he has no one to interact with, so the sex spark isn't flying, and he somehow seems more frustrated and more aloof. Do you feel that too? I can look at his affect.
He is sort of more removed and neutral, and when he's not, yeah, like like he's described, the SX is flying, or
the pollen of social sexual, like fertilizing the room.
A Hopalong Cassidy movie, and I saw people coming out of the studio across the street. There were no children, it was all adults, and they were all weeping, they were crying. And I was shocked because I thought, what movie could do that to grown-up people, to make them sobbing in the street together? So I crossed the street and I looked at the poster for the film, and it was La Strada from Fellini. And of course, many years later, I was also watching La Strada. I was also weeping. But that was the first time that I understood that cinema, movies could be art. Technology is here to stay. It's fantastic, and it's fantastic for cinema because it does free you to do a helicopter shot. You really had to work hard to get your producer to allow you to do a helicopter shot. And now, a drone shot is very inexpensive and it can be fantastic. Of course, like any other technology, you can overuse it. Almost any Netflix series, almost any Netflix series you have, well, every episode you'll have a couple of drone shots of the car going through the countryside and stuff, but it's fun.
It's all like competency stuff.
That was another 3-wing 4 marker. Like every Netflix movie has this. It's a hint of disdain for something being overused in arts and being cheap. Social sexual, 9-wing 1, 5-wing 4, 3-wing 4 for him.
Yeah.
Like a flatline, a social sexual butterfly flatline.
Because the butterfly.
Overlay with a frustrated overlay, a triple frustrated overlay.
Like, I mean, he just looks conventionally like a 9-wing 1.
Yeah, and he's very refined and very articulate, and also archetypally he is 9-wing 1. There's nothing heavy and slutty pillowish about him. He's just he's more he's prince-like, and he's not a 9-wing 8 is more of a grump and more messy, and I don't perceive him as messy, even though he's social sexual. So 9-wing 8 and social sexual is a clusterfuck of mess.
Sexual hamburger meat or something. Christina says someone should diss him to make it less simpy.
Go on, Christina. Just roast us for being such Cronenberg sims.